And we're live from the living room as Doug eyes up the match day spread. He's reaching for the buffalo wing. Perfect! Hang on, what's this? Oh, he's gone for a can of Pepsi too! Incredible! What a finish! Sensational combination! Look at the delight on his face. There's no doubt about it. It just tastes better. Match days deserve Pepsi. Food deserves Pepsi. Grab a pack of Pepsi Zero Sugar for today's match. It's poetry in motion.
Hi, my name's Anna Campbell. I'm the executive director and one of the co-founders of Dykes and Dolls, which is a lesbian and trans and queer focused everything. It's an event calendar and a zine and a Substack, and we are a nightlife collective. We throw events. We started last March. We've been doing this for 1 year, and it has been like a whirlwind kind of insane entity now, where I feel like we've really embedded ourselves in the spaces. You'll get to meet these two lovely people next, but we drop copies of the zine at both of their establishments, right? We're it's all very, very connected. But it's been a pleasure getting to help create and promote spaces for queer people, but specifically for lesbian and trans people to exist in the city.
We're gathered at Greenlight Bookstore in the heart of Brooklyn. Amazing. Another book tour event back in June, this time featuring an incredible panel of local changemakers, each having founded a queer space of their own.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tiffany. I'm the owner of Gladys Books and Wine. We are a new Black lesbian wine bar and bookstore in Bedford-Stuyvesant. Gladys's mission is to uplift the rich tradition of Black lesbian feminism, because we believe now, with the rise of fascism, we need those lessons now more than ever. We have both a bar component, so we have a wine bar downstairs, and our upstairs is a bookstore cafe, and we host a range of events ranging from author events to parties to poetry events to comedy shows. But our goal is to be a space for, again, uplifting the Black lesbian feminist tradition, but also, more closely to my heart, to really be a space for Black queer aunties, many of whom want a softer third space, but who still want to have a good drink and a good glass of wine.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Nikki. I am her. I am the co-founder, co-owner, co-everything of The Bush, a dyke bar in Bushwick, Brooklyn. We are a space essentially, we host a myriad of events, but primarily we are a bar that hosts, again, a lot of events. Our busiest nights are Friday and Saturday. But I would say we created the space out of necessity. There weren't a lot of lesbian spaces. There weren't a lot of spaces that were LGBTQ plus without the G that existed in Brooklyn at the time that we opened, or in New York, really, that was owned by someone Black, by a Black woman, and to see now all of the spaces that exist that are owned by Black dykes, really making my heart sing, because we deserve all of the spaces, and I would say that we're very intentional about making sure that the space feels welcoming to everyone, specifically people of color.
Hi, everyone. This is Cruising Podcast. I'm Sarah Gabrielli, and you just heard introductions from 3 of our panelists that day. You're also going to hear from our author, Rachel Karp, as we all dive into third spaces, origin stories, Brooklyn nightlife, online communities and discourse versus meeting IRL, labels, language, and inclusivity in queer spaces, and much more. Our book tour is still ongoing, so head to cruisingpod.com/events for all of the details, and you can purchase the Lesbian Bar Chronicles at cruisingpod.com/book or wherever books are sold. Do any of you have stories to share about not just your inspiration, but sort of how these spaces came to be, like how you ended up where you are right now?
Dykes and Dolls originally began with one of our other co-founders, Mary Michael. They really wanted to get off the dating apps, and they're a Virgo, and they were making a very neurotic, insane spreadsheet, just keeping track of everything that was happening for themselves. And I was kind of like, I think that you should share with the class a little bit. And it was my idea to kind of be like, why don't we make this a zine and make it physical media? And that was kind of, I think, the critical component, which you talked about, the rise of fascism. It was so related to the exact same sentiment of wanting to make something that was physical. So no matter what happens in this political climate, we get to say exactly what we want to say every time and how we want to say it. And it can be political, and we don't have to worry about it disappearing. We work with a local printer, and we can print it ourselves with them, and they have the same politics as us, and we don't have to worry about the fear. And we get to have a voice and help other people find the same spaces that we find so sacred. It's like a vessel for finding a community, though it's in that kind of same sentence, we created a community of our own by doing this kind of thing. But it was kind of from this idea of we need to keep our spaces safe, and it is our job as queer people to do that, unfortunately. But I think it's worked well, because now, kind of like how you guys have discovered, when you start getting to show people how much there is, it makes people want to do more. And so you open the bush and then you said, wait, actually it's possible, and then more gets to exist. But
the question was
just if there's more to your origin story, how I know your entire story, but and it's in the book too. But yeah, just sort of how you, and I feel like you did sort of touch on this, but how you ended up creating the space that you did.
Yeah, well, our story is more so we used to go to the lesbian bars that existed, and there wasn't necessarily a space to have a big party that we did do a lot in our 20s, and also a place to sit down and chat and while the party's going on, which I know it feels like that should have existed already, but it didn't. So that really was the catalyst to opening the bush. It's we need a space where we can, because we were getting older. I'm in my mid-30s now. And oh my God, I am. And we were one day we're going to want to sit down while also partying, while also still having fun. But and that's how it came about.
For me, it was a layoff. I was working at Google, laid off, and I just had this moment of are you gonna spend the rest of your life trying to increase engagement? And the answer, I know, sadly, truly. And you also, yeah. And originally I thought, I was okay, I'm burned out. Every Black woman I know is burned out. I'll do a spa. But it was very important to me. When I moved to Bed-Stuy, it changed my life. I'm from the west side of Chicago. It's a neighborhood very similar to Bed-Stuy, or what kind of the historic Bed-Stuy, which is lots of Black families owning their homes. And it was healing to me. It was the beginning of a real healing journey for me to kind of stop indoctrinating myself with all the toxicity of corporate America. And I felt that I wanted to do something in the neighborhood that already done something for me. And so I was a spa. And I found the location, although maybe that was the first issue. We've been having some issues with our landlord, so I'm in telling this, I'm I should have known. But I was I gotta have this space. It was a block away, and part of what I wanted was to be able to walk to this place, for me to not just be the owner, but to be a customer, because I live in the community that we opened the business in. And so I was we're gonna do this, and then very quickly realized they're I don't know anything about running a spa. What was I talking about? I had also never ran a bookstore or a bar, but the operational complexity at the time, a very prominent spa here was having all these mold and issues. And I was maybe this guy telling me, girl, you have no business running a spa. But I was an English and African American studies major. And, the writing of Black women changed my life. That it was what led me down a path of love and of loving myself in a world that has at every turn tried to teach me to hate myself. And I would say that's especially true about the writing of Black queer women, that I view Audre Lorde as a literary godmother. I view the writing of even kind of queer adjacent Black feminist writers like Bell Hooks as important to my politicization. And I think that we're in a world where people aren't reading as much, even though like the power of reading in terms of resisting fascism, in terms of our brain, our ability to navigate and hold complex stories is quite important. And the wine was really about, like, I love wine, I love to host. My grandmother was not much of a reader, but that lady loved to host. She could drink with the best of them. And she was my first safe space. And so it really came down to wanting to do something in my neighborhood. I live a block away from Gladys. Wanting to do something that felt like an offering that I could uniquely give. And because I personally just love reading, I personally love talking about Black, womanism, Black feminist theory, and wanting a place where we could uplift that at this moment where I feel like we're having a memification of politics, where instead of going to the primary text, we're taking second and third renditions of that work. And I think right now we all need to be reading primary text. And I also just love the 70s. And so for me, I think a lot about how in the 70s, people just started meeting and talking, and those became consciousness raising circles that spawned off all these amazing groups that became pivotal to surviving what was a very intense time, the anti-war movement, really getting the rights of women inscribed in the law, really focusing on like how do we do something with the Civil Rights Act that had been just passed. So for me, it really became about like uplifting an era I really believed in, creating a third space in my community that I wanted to exist, and really uplifting work that I think is vitally important in this moment.
Great, thank you. You're touching on something that I was about to ask you, which is, no, it's fine, and you knew I was about to ask you. We've heard so many stories, and they're both on the podcast and in the book, of people experiencing queer space for the first time, for our purposes, often lesbian bars, and so many times from our elders we've heard it was the first time that they even realized that they weren't alone in their experience, that other lesbians and queer people existed at all. And so I guess this question is sort of two parts. So I'm curious, before you had these beautiful spaces that you've created, what was the first space that you felt safe and affirmed in? And also, do you have a memory of like the first lesbian or queer representation that you experienced? If that's not, maybe that's the same thing or not. What's funny?
My first queer representation was the L word. I would go to my sister's house. I must have been in elementary or high school. I don't remember, but I would go to my sister's house and just lay in the basement and watch Showtime. And so I would say my first safe space was home. And I know that I'm incredibly lucky to say that, because that's not the reality for a lot of people. My mom, like, I'm a Caribbean immigrant, so that is not not a lot of folks can say that home was their first safe space, but my family was just incredibly welcoming, I suppose. But my first safe space outside was the cubby hole No, it wasn't. It wasn't. It was a place called Escuelitas. And I swear to God, when I talk about this, no one remembers it except the people I went there with. But it was a place, around 42nd Street, and it allowed you to come 18 plus. Ooh.
Yes.
Did I still go in with my friend's fake ID, who was incredibly shorter than I was, and they still let us in? Yes. But it was 18 plus. They would do a lot of drag shows. Like, it was just like the quintessential thing to do when you were 18. And it would we would go to the pier after. It was just like growing up. I grew up in Jersey City, which was incredibly diverse. It is one of the most diverse cities in America. But Escuelitas, and does no one else know? No?
Anyone?
Oh, God. It was just like such a beautiful space for queer youth, and it was so diverse. So I would say the Bushes are owed to Escuelitas, because that the number one thing I wanted to make sure that we was diverse. Wow, I miss that place. They closed down, but I wish everyone got a chance to experience that. Oh, I don't know. I just went.
I'll make mine quick. L Word was a big one. Queer as Folk, which preceded the L Word on Showtime, was another one. They had like one lesbian couple. But I'll say for me, it was actually The Color Purple, because The Color Purple was the first time I saw a Black, poor woman depicted as queer. And I think a lot of the queer representation up until then had kind of painted queerness as like a other white thing. And like, I was like, I don't know, I'm kind of gay. But I think for me, it actually reaffirmed, I think, a sense of otherness in terms of like, can I be Black and queer? And in terms of the media. And I remember, The Color Purple, I saw it as a movie before, but in the movie they really turned down the queerness, because it's my mom and my grandmother's favorite movie, and so we had watched it together. There's just one scene where the bed kind of rocks, and if you're as a kid, you're like, oh, okay, they're just talking, but like obviously reading the book, I was like,
They're talking.
she's in love with her, like. And I do think that, again, that intersection, my grandmother's from Mississippi. She's a poor Black woman. I was a poor Black child on the west side of Chicago. And so I think seeing that intersection of not just her being Black, but also poor, because I think often, we don't have representation of working class queer people. I think that's why, Stonebridge, and there's like a whole Ruby Fruit Jungle. There's all like working class lesbian representation, which I think is a big part of dyke identity, and why people don't use dyke as much, because I think there's some class stuff there, but we'll get to it. But anyways, The Color Purple was my first time seeing myself represented.
I think that mine was Grey's Anatomy, which but I remember I was like, because I realized I was queer, I was like 11 or 12, and I kind of kept it on lock for a long time until I was like 21 or 22. But I was like, Callie, wait, when I was like the freshman in high school. But I think that what's funny, I've never really thought about like the first place. I've never thought about it before, which is crazy. This is like kind of all I do all day, but I've never been asked that. And I'm having a really hard time coming up with an answer, which I think is kind of sad. And I think it's something I wrote a piece for like an anthology we did for Dykes and Dolls. And in it, I wrote a lot about how I like went to Cubby Hole and I would like stand outside across the street and like not go inside. And like I'd go to the Dyke March and I went by myself and I like stood on the sidelines and it started and I went home or like went to work, right? Like I kind of was like always on the like outskirts and I refused. I mean, I lived here for 2 or 3 years before Dykes and Dolls started, and I just like didn't become a part of any of it at all. And it wasn't until starting Dykes and Dolls. Now I'm kind of like, actually I could do with no plans. Actually I could do with not going out to the bar. Actually, and now I have these like options and choices that I didn't have until truly, a year ago, which feels kind of crazy to be 30 and now finally have it. But outside of that, I think I grew up in Louisiana, which is like, yikes, right? But I did go to New Orleans a lot. We lived like 45 minutes away from New Orleans, and I spent so much time there that I think sometimes I forget how like embedded queerness was into like what my everyday life even looked like. I think that like New Orleans is like a magical place. I'm happy to be from there and not anywhere else, because it's the only other place I like a lot besides New York, because it does have a certain kind of like special energy to it that made being queer something I didn't think a lot about, to the point that like when I was going to come out as a little 12-year-old, I was like, didn't realize it was bad because I got to be there. So I don't know, maybe like simultaneously it was like I always had the safety a little bit, but then also I didn't actually find the community bit of it until very, very recently. I don't know, it's a strange kind of dichotomy of both.
But you feel like you sort of created your own, like these other, were you on the sidelines because you didn't feel like those spaces were like right for you? Like what was that about?
When I moved to New York, I quit drinking. And so I'm like 3.5 years sober now, and so it's also like the queerness and drinking culture is like so intertwined. And I don't think that's like, it's neither here nor there. No comment on that one. I'm like, but it is so interesting. And I think a big part of it was like after I got sober, I was very aware of like how I was in every space I was in, and I still am. There's kind of no hiding anywhere. And to go into a space like Cubby or Hens and like be like, and I also can't get a drink and I have to like really put myself out there. It always felt it was like a one too many things to kind of handle. But also I'm like introverted and I like didn't really party a lot before I quit drinking, and like I felt the drinking party culture of queerness was so intertwined. It didn't feel like it was for me. And it took me working on Dykes and Dolls with so many other people, and also my partner Abby also works on Dykes and Dolls, and having someone to be with all the time has made being in those spaces so much easier, because there are spaces that are for me that are not drinking related. Or if they are, it doesn't matter to me as much now.
Yeah, go
The
for it.
Bush has mocktails.
Everywhere. The NADs, everywhere. Don't worry.
No, but I wanted to say one more thing to add to what you said about New Orleans. That's how I felt about Jersey City, that I did not realize how I was being perceived, because it was just so I keep saying diverse, but it was just so diverse. And
Drink every time.
I will say this, and speaking of corporate America, it's like, because Jersey City was so diverse, I did not realize how white corporate America was going to be. So that was a shock, and how straight and how heteronormative and how, my God.
I also think to your point about like drinking culture and sometimes alcoholism being very intertwined with the queer community, we like obviously encountered that in the last like 6 years and working on the podcast and the book. And it's interesting because like the history of it like kind of goes back to these bar spaces being the only accessible queer spaces, usually run by like mafia or other nefarious outsiders, who were like, oh, we can like make money off of these people by giving them a gathering place and selling them alcohol. And now we have a lot of options, which is beautiful, but we also have this history and this legacy of the bars. And I think there are a lot of, we definitely noticed like in 2021 on our road trip, lesbian bars in general being way ahead of the curve on NA beverages. Like everywhere we went, it was like not cool yet, not super mainstream. And like we'd be at like a dive bar in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and they would have like non-alcoholic spirits to make mixed drinks.
The first we ever
time we
heard
ever
of it,
saw
yeah.
it was in this bar in Oklahoma. And yeah, I don't know. There we've like met some sober bar owners and some bar owners and bartenders who are really, I think, trying to like reckon with that dichotomy.
Starting or growing your own business can be intimidating and lonely at times. Your to-do list may feel endless with new tasks, and lists can easily begin to overrun your life. So finding the right tool that not only helps you out, but simplifies everything as a built-in business partner can be a game changer. For millions of businesses, that tool is Shopify. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world and 10% of all e-commerce in the US. From household names like Gymshark, Rare Beauty, and Heinz, to brands just getting started. Shopify has hundreds of ready-to-use templates that can help you build a beautiful online store that matches your brand's style. And you can tackle all the important tasks in one place, from inventory to payments to analytics and more. No need to save multiple websites or try to figure out what platform is hosting the tool that you need. And if people haven't heard about your brand, you can get the word out like you have a marketing team behind you, with easy-to-run email and social media campaigns to reach customers wherever they're scrolling or strolling. Start your business today with the industry's best business partner, Shopify, and start hearing. Sign up for your $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/realm. Go to shopify.com/realm. That's shopify.com/realm.
This is going to be an extremely busy month. I have to watch 104 soccer games, follow the pregame, the postgame, yell useless opinions at the TV. It's a lot. So I knew that when it comes to screening for colon cancer, the choice was clear. The Cologuard Plus test. It can be used at home and can only take 15 minutes, so I can do it during halftime and not miss any action. If you are 45 or older and at average risk, ask your healthcare provider about screening for colon cancer with the Cologuard test. You can also request a prescription at Cologuard.com.
Welcome to a new era of baseball's great spectacle, the T-Mobile Home Run Derby, live on Netflix. The biggest sluggers in baseball put their talents to the test on All-Star Weekend. Raw power meets star power. Big swagger meets bigger slams. And you don't swing to make contact. You swing to make history. Watch the T-Mobile Home Run Derby live on Netflix this Monday, July 13th at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific.
Need a laptop that's built to perform and designed to last all day? Select Windows 11 PCs starting at $499.99 are now at Best Buy. Learn more at bestbuy.com. Best Buy. Imagine that.
You just read for us our sort of working definition of a lesbian bar. But can you talk a little bit more about that language and how you landed there?
Yeah, so the definition, the longer definition that we kind of came to for the book is what we say, let's say that a lesbian is anyone who says that they're a lesbian, and not in like a joking way that sometimes cis guys do. But anyone who sincerely is like, I'm a lesbian, great, you're a lesbian, welcome to the club. And then a lesbian bar is a bar that is B, owned or operated by lesbians, LGBTQ women, or non-binary folks, and C, intentionally welcomes lesbians, LGBTQ women, and non-binary folks. That being said, I don't think there's a single space in this book that is not like, that would not welcome anyone in the community or any ally in with open arms, so long as they're kind of being respectful of the space. The other definition of a lesbian bar we sometimes talk about is this like be nice or leave or don't be an asshole policy that these spaces tend to have.
Yeah, because people ask us all the time who, like still, I mean, in the past week, who's allowed at this lesbian bar? And the answer is always anyone, but and legally. Also what legally, yes. But also, yeah, it's crazy how many places say that it's just like be respectful and you can come here. But I'm curious how you all define your spaces as far as like, you know, both who is this space for and also who is welcomed in it.
It's actually like that was a large part of like what the mission statement was when we like started Dykes and Dolls, was like focusing on that question kind of specifically, because we have found most people exist at intersections. Most people we know don't identify as one thing. A couple, but not many, are like, I'm a dyke and I'm also a doll, but I'm like kind of like she, they. It's like always like a little complicated. And we wanted Dykes and Dolls to get to exist for everyone that felt like it should exist for them. And I think that has been more expansive than we ever kind of imagined, in a very positive way. We've had like, you know, kind of a classic pushback, not in any real kind of way, but people are joking, kind of being like, oh, but like there won't be any like guys there, right? And I'm like, if a girl who's trans wants to come to the party and she has a loving boyfriend who's cis, he's absolutely welcome to come. Like, that's so, why would I ever not want him there if he's been supportive enough to her that she wants him there? I think that there has to be nuance sometimes, and I don't think that people always want that. But I think when we're looking at spaces being diverse and inclusive, they have to be, and I think that's a good thing. I'm like happy that we've made a space that kind of welcomes in enough people, and I think the people who shouldn't be there, this is guys who are lying, saying, yeah, I'm a lesbian. They're not. They're looking in the door and closing it. They've kind of gotten the message mainly, which is always a relief. But I think that building it to be for, I don't know, an inclusive group. I mean, I think what has set us apart from other like event calendars was that it has been specific, and I think it being specific is oftentimes very helpful. It's like why like y'all call yourselves like a dyke bar, like you're right, like it sends a different message, which I think is like powerful.
Yeah, I think for us it was really around so we center Black lesbian feminist texts. Like if you look on our shelves, like that's what you're going to find most represented. And when you look at our programming, that is our focus. It was very important for me to not be afraid to use the word lesbian, because I think that because of internet discourse, it was starting to become synonymous with TERF. And I think actually there's a rich tradition of like lesbian and trans solidarity, that many lesbians become trans men, many trans women identify as lesbians. And I think it's quite important to not let TERFs take total ownership of the word lesbian. And I think if we become afraid to use it, we concede that. And as a lesbian who loves trans people, has deep relationships with trans men and women and non-binary folks, I just refuse to let that happen. I feel similarly about the Black part of that like I have experienced, both myself as a Black person, but also other Black folks say that like they love people of color solidarity, but not being afraid to say Black is important, because in an anti-Black world, sometimes people will reach for phrases like people of color as a way not to be like Black, which is what we are. And I think particularly in Bed-Stuy, which is a changing neighborhood, that was deeply important. And I also agree with you about the power of specificity and creating solidarity. Like sometimes I think we get in these online discourse, I'm like, in real life, people walk into our space and they're like, this is a beautiful space. And very quickly they go, oh, okay, they love black women here. Like, it's very clear from like the artwork, the reading. And what we see is that you don't have to do enforcement, that people will be drawn naturally based on what you put out to what resonates. And so we have tons of folks who are neither black nor lesbians. And what we say is you don't have to be black or lesbian, but you must love us. And that love ethic is a deep part of the solidarity that we think is required for any space to be safe and affirming. And we have tons of folks who are neither black nor lesbian, but feel safe in that space because of our unapologetic centering of black lesbians. And I think for us, the big thing is to really make it clear about what we mean when we say lesbian is that we do a lot of specific programming to uplift black trans voices. That's deeply important to me personally, and I also think that it's the responsibility of any space that calls itself explicitly lesbian, because we are in a world where some folks, I would hope it's a few bad apples, but with the internet, extremism spreads. But I think it's important I think it's a responsibility actually as a lesbian space to not just say you're in solidarity, but to actually be in solidarity. So our first event, we raised, I think, more than a couple. It was actually very crazy. Like, it was a screening where we were like, oh, all the ticket sales will go to Black Trans Liberation Kitchen. And then, I was so moved by hearing Queen Jean, who runs Black Trans Liberation Kitchen, speak, that I was like, I'm a donate, And then this other couple was like, this lesbian wife and wife was like, we're going to donate. It was like a church. And by the end, we had raised more than $2,000 for Black Trans Liberation Kitchen. And that's a bare minimum we can do, because the truth is that, like, of course, in a society where there's oppression by gender, many of us who were born and socialized as female feel that. But those of us who have to find home in our bodies, outside the bodies we were born in, feel that most. And so I think it's a moral responsibility as a lesbian space to be explicit about standing in solidarity and actually materially supporting Black trans voices.
Mm-hmm. Well.
Are you fired up?
No, but I think you both said it so beautifully. It's like, when we opened, it was very much wanting to be an inclusive space for everyone. And I do think about extremism, the amount of times I've had to tell people you cannot assume someone's gender is kind of sad in our community, because we should understand being marginalized, that we should not be doing that. But I mean, you both said basically everything that is like the ethos of the Bush. It's like inclusivity for everyone that believes that they belong there. Mm-hmm.
Do you want to talk about Dyke Bar? Why Dyke?
Well, I'm a big Dyke. And I mean, to Tiffany's point about like erasure of like word and especially the word lesbian, especially the word dyke, I just wanted to make sure that we solidified in the ethos and in the ether, in the world, that we are dykes who want to spread love, who want to open this space for everyone that believes in what we're doing.
Can I ask a quick question about this? Generationally, I've noticed young people prefer sapphic, and I have questions because I'm worried that it's a softer. It's like, there's this like angry lesbian. As an angry lesbian, it's true, but there's this angry lesbian stereotype, and sapphic feels like a more like aesthetic and softer version. But also, I'm like, you can use whatever word you want. But I don't know if you all have seen that, but I've noticed it amongst younger folks, and I've been curious about it.
I'm curious about that too, because it feels like dyke is such a political statement, and I thought that the generations below us were more radicalized and more like political.
Yeah, I'm not positive, and no one quote me on this. I do think that sapphic is more inclusive of including like any people who are bi as well. I think that's why. But I do agree that it does send like a different message, like something that's branded as sapphic, I think does oftentimes feel different than something branded as dyke, which is like interesting. It's almost like, which not sure if that's good or bad, but I do think it's supposed to be a little, right. I mean, it's supposed to be a little more inclusive.
Do we know for a fact that dyke is not supposed to be inclusive of?
I think
really.
I've had many people I've had many people be like, "Oh, you work on Zia and Dolls," and I said, "What was that first part?" And they're like, "I don't want to say that one because I'm not a dyke." Like there's a lot of hesitancy around people who don't want to say the word
dyke is like black lesbian.
Yes, and so there's a lot, and even I think it's very, very interesting. I think that a lot of people feel like as though like if they are bi, they are not a dyke. And so there was even like within our team, people being like, "Can I be on the team?" Because Dykes and Dolls is run by like 35 people. We're all volunteers. There's like a real, very large entity of people working. But like they were like, "Can I be on the team if I'm not a dyke?" And I was like, yes. There's also and queer at the end of that, right? It's more inclusive than that. But yeah, I think it's.
Since we're talking about language, I would love to know how you all came to the names of your spaces. I feel like you should start here as we're talking about dyke and getting into that. Like, was there a lot of thought into using that language?
Yeah, for sure. It definitely was like something that we had talked a lot about when we were like starting the organization and being like, what is it? Also we didn't think it was going to really go anywhere. So it's kind of like, but put a lot of thought into it nonetheless. And I think that one, it did provide that kind of like powerful messaging of like, there is no hiding what this thing is. It was very in your face and very on purpose. We're going to make uncensored media. Like, here it is a little bit, but also simultaneously, like we were kind of beginning the organization. From inception to the first issue was only 2 weeks. Like we had the idea and then 2 weeks later it existed. And so, which is insane. I know, which is really crazy. I know. I'm a Pisces. Can you believe it? Really? But my partner is a Capricorn stellium, and they designed everything. They did everything. Wouldn't exist without all the Capricorn and the Virgo and all that. But yeah, we picked Dykes and Dolls on purpose because of the power of the word dyke being so like in your face, but also is like around the same time as like Protect the Dolls, Sabrina Carpenter at the VMAs kind of like moment of things, and also like he him lesbian discourse. It was like that era, which is still happening, but we were like, let's pick something that kind of doesn't let people kind of skirt around it, and people will know immediately upon looking at it whether it is something that is for them or not, which is kind of the ethos.
Gladys is a very old black name. That was why.
I don't think I need to explain the bush. It's because Bushwick, duh.
Is there a business side to having your respective space be inclusive? We've heard a lot about how lesbian bars kind of need the rest of the alphabet. Like in your own respective spaces, is that something that comes up at all as far as like reach, if you're able to have more of an audience?
I will say, even in the queer community, who holds the power? White men, gay white men. So do we need them? Not necessarily, but kind of. Sometimes. You can come by sometimes. But no, we've been able to somewhat survive with just the community that shows up for us. So I wouldn't necessarily say that we need the G, but it wouldn't hurt.
We're still in our first year, so and it's been quite the year. But I would say what I found, the thing I was most worried about, candidly, is I think sometimes there's this like black people are more homophobic, and I think that's a misnomer. I think black people are people, and some people are homophobic, and they happen to be black. But I was a little nervous. I was like, because Bedside, my experience at it. It's been the most affirming place I've ever lived, and I was like, we're gonna be explicitly like there's a big black trans lesbian flag, so it's like the trans flag and the lesbian flag together when you come in. So although some people told me they don't know it's the lesbian flag, and so I'm like, but also Marsha P. Johnson's right underneath it. Like I feel like it was very important for me that two things be true, that the space be aesthetically beautiful, but also like that that you are in a lesbian space when you walk, a trans-inclusive lesbian space when you walk in. And so what we found is that like neighborhood people are just so happy we exist. They're happy to have a place to come to do their work. They're happy to have a place that is, again, in a changing neighborhood. Most of the new businesses aren't black businesses, unfortunately, in Bed-Stuy. And so there's this like real like spiritual connection with our neighbors, many of whom are straight. Nobody's perfect, but most of whom we love. But so I think that was the best surprise. And many of whom are elders, and I think for me, because of potentially some of my own experiences, but it's been so beautiful to watch Black queer elders engage with other Black elders, and also young people have a space where they can talk to older Black queer people or queer people generally, and like that intergenerational piece has been really helpful, and it's been retentive for us in terms of customers. But what we're finding is it's actually the books that have been more like people like the wine. The wine's very helpful, especially on the weekends, but really the books part has been the part that have made people feel a real connection with the space, and which is good because bar life, it's hard, honey. People, but with wine, they don't get too drunk. Mostly.
I'm already feeling.
But really, yeah. So for us, we've been doing some reflection ahead of our 1-year anniversary, and the book part is where we want to lean in and really like, and I think the beauty of books is that you can engage a personal experience that's not yours, but you can still, really deeply engage with it. And so that has been what has sustained us. And as we move forward, we're going to keep the wine component, but really it's the book part. And that book part has been, again, our selection focus is Black lesbian feminism, but people love it. They're like, I never knew this book existed and it changed my life. And like the really crazy part has been straight men will sometimes bring their dates there. And I think it's a like, genuinely, like, I've been like, okay, like the money is being spent, but also they're so respectful, they engage with the work in a way that's meaningful. And so I have been surprised as someone who has been accused in the past of being a man-hating lesbian, but also it's redeemed. I'm like, okay, like, cool. Like, cause the first time it happened, I was like, oh, is this guy gonna cause trouble? And they're just grateful to be in the space. And what a friend of a friend who was one of the straight guys said is that like he said he felt like he didn't have to put on like I guess the traditional airs of masculinity. And I do think that's why these spaces are important, even if you don't have the identity, because it is a space where you're not burdened by I guess the expectations of the external majority culture.
It's interesting because of the way Dykes and Dolls operates, we don't necessarily have a lot of income necessarily. We print and we distribute all of our copies for free. No, literally, yeah, right. Everything we do is all the copies are distributed for free, and so then, but printing is I don't know if anyone has had to print anything lately. It's mad expensive. It's kind of the most expensive thing in the world. And so it really, really is. But so we do monthly, or hoping to do more than monthly soon, events to fund the production. So we can get more copies printed to get them in more places, to pay our team, to do those kinds of things. But what we've found that we joke about a lot is that lesbians have been kind of downgraded to Thursday nights. That's our party night. That's what we get to have fun. Because every time we've contacted any bar that's not a lesbian bar to be oh, can we have a party on a Friday? They say no. And they say we're booked, or the bar minimum is not joking, $6K, which is really high for a party that's 5 hours with a bunch of lesbians and drinks are $6 or something. You know what I mean? It's been we've not hit bar minimums many times, and we've had to pay them out of pocket, which sucks. But it is I don't want to say that the stereotype is true that lesbians don't drink enough to pay, but there's so much that systemically is occurring within that is so impossible to navigate. It's women make less money, and we're looking at marginalized groups in particular make even less so. We're in an economy where everything is just so what is anyone to do? And so we take our Wednesday nights and we take our Thursday nights, and we have just as much fun, and we go to work the next day, and it's okay. But it is, I do think it's difficult, and so finding spaces that are happy to have us for free or a lower bar minimum, kind of knowing the situation has been such a blessing, because then it's more money in our pockets to print more copies to get them to more people. It becomes a little bit of a trickle down situation, which we're very grateful for, which is good.
I might know somebody.
What are some of the other challenges that come? The challenges of making and maintaining these queer spaces. We've been touching on that, but what comes to mind for you?
Repair. I feel the community. Let me tread lightly. Okay. But I feel there's not enough room for repair. and not, and I'm not saying that we're perfect, we're not. And so there has been some like negative experiences that people have, and like the quickness for, God, and I hate to say this, but cancel culture, like the quickness to that feels so irrational to me, because it's like, I'm just a person. Justine, who I co-own the spaces, is just a person. And we really want to figure out how to repair with people, with our patrons, with our customers, because ultimately we need customers, right? And I feel like within the queer community, it is a trickle down like effect. So one person says something and then it trickles down, and it is kind of like the story that you're telling yourself. And so to me, that is the most harmful, because it's not allowing us to remedy what it is or what the issue is. Also, I feel that there is a kind of like misconception about how bars are run, because and how spaces are run, because there's been many times that we still have to put in our own money to sustain the space, and people, you know, I think you see that we're busy on a Friday or a Saturday and think, well, they're making all this money, and that's absolutely not true. Not even close. All of that put together, like, I want people to understand, like, you have to go into these spaces with care. Like, can I just say this is really disgusting, so TMI, but I went on a retreat, well, not TMI, but I went on a retreat last week where I didn't have my phone, and I came back and I was looking through my text messages to catch up. The first text message I saw, that someone was so upset that the bathroom line was long that they peed on the floor. Oh. Now, why that's upsetting to me, girl.
I think it's valid that that's upsetting.
It's like, right. And I'm like, oh, I'm fine. No, after just coming back from a retreat where I'm like, why did you do that? No, what I really want to say is, what the yeah. But I'm saying that to say, like, we need people that care, because then our employees are cleaning that up, and that's just disgusting. And again, it's just a trickle down where then other people think that they can do this, and I'm like, that is never going to be okay. And it's not just that, it's like other things. And I don't want to keep going and ranting and sound like a crazy person, but it's like, we all need to care about each other. And that includes the spaces that are being maintained for us, because it's not just, okay, they're making all this money and everything can be maintained. That is far from the truth. Mm-hmm. So it's like, it's care, it's God, repair, care and repair, like, please. Yeah.
Only thing I'll say is we would love to host Dyke and Dolls. We got a very low honey. But I do genuinely think that what we suffer from as well is that people are, oh, this space is so beautiful. They rolling in dough. I'm like, no, honey, it's my life savings. It's everything I own. But I would echo everything you said. The other thing I would say is just like, I think that what it takes to work in a space, and I think that's been, for me, the hardest challenge of, like, you know, I have a lot of earth placements, so I'm a Virgo rising, Cat moon, and so I have my own work stuff, but I think, like, trying to balance my, like, anti-capitalist ideals with the reality of, like, I need this space to be sustained because I believe in what we're doing. I think this work deserves a platform that it doesn't get often. And, like, you know, it sucks to be like, hey, you can't be smoking weed at work. Well, you at work, babe. And they're like, oh, I was on my break. It's like, yeah, but you have to come back. It's like, we all know, you know, it's like, I don't want to be like a cop, but then I unfortunately, like, I got to say shit like that. So I think that's the other part. And then
I wish I didn't relate.
So I think that's just labor, you know. And I think that's the reality of what capitalism does to all of us, which in an owner-worker dynamic, it puts you there. But I wish it didn't have to.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I mean, truly, like, the exact same thing. The labor is unreal. I, like, don't, so because Dykes and Dolls is, like, fully volunteer-based, like, I have a full job, like, outside of Dykes and Dolls that I work at, like, all day long. I'm a barista. Like, I'm, like, making coffee all day, and then I'm, like, gonna get fired because I'm sending emails all shift long. I'm, like, working on my phone so much, doing, like, I mean, like, and not just me, but, like, everyone on the team doing so much labor all the time, and I'm so happy to do it. Don't get it twisted. I'm very, very happy to do it, but it's so much work, and then you get a DM that says, why wasn't my event in the calendar?
Oh my God.
And I said, why wasn't it? I thought that I submitted it, and I'm like, actually, it's this or that, or or just like kind of like you said, the inability to kind of show up or have a conversation, I think, is something that we are lacking as a culture. I think that like the ability to be like, hi, like this actually was like difficult or wrong, right? And like what could we do to figure it out? Instead, the kind of assumptions I think that so many people do, that is not what community is about. Community is about accountability and being able to have hard conversations and have confrontations and show up and shift and change and learn. And I think that has been a very, very difficult thing to, as like just someone who we stumbled into doing this, and now we have had to learn to have those hard conversations and how to like find a way to balance like my job with my personal life. I mean, me and Abby running so much of Dykes and Dolls from our house, our whole full basement is like been transformed into like its own little, but it's like it's our relationship and that and this, and finding the balance of that is kind of endlessly impossible. But like one day it'll almost pay the bills for myself, one day. But don't hold on to that idea. Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
I know Rachel and I can definitely relate to that. We didn't really get the chance to talk about like in-person versus the internet space, which like until this book, Cruising has really just occupied the digital space. But I feel like queer infighting is just part of the internet. There's like a big difference in like community feeling when you're like doing these in-person events and making physical media versus what we've been doing for the past 6 years.
Yeah, I think you've probably all experienced this as well. Like, there's a huge difference between trying to repair or care or have a conversation with somebody in real life and online. And I do think so much of the discourse that like we're oftentimes flooded with in the online spaces that we like try to moderate and maintain doesn't show up in real life, and that has been really beautiful and refreshing to be sharing real space at some of these events and with this book with all of you and all of you.
Thanks for listening to Cruising. If you like this episode, please consider leaving us a 5-star review. It really helps others discover our podcast. Cruising is produced by a small but mighty team of 3 queer women, Rachel Karp, Jen McGinnity, and me, your host and editor, Sarah Gabrielli. Our theme song is by Joey Freeman. You can support us at buymeacoffee.com/cruisingpod. Follow us on social media at cruisingpod, on Substack, cruisingpod.substack.com, and at our website, www.cruisingpod.com.
Hi, listeners. We want to tell you about a podcast we love. It's called Rebel Girls, formerly known as Goodnight Stories for Rebel Girls. It's about real-life women who are changing the world with their courage, creativity, and big, bold ideas. Want to know how Taylor Swift became a superstar? Or hear how Simone Biles became the greatest athlete of all time? From immersive stories to heartfelt interviews to super smart advice, Rebel Girls brings you stories that will get you fired up to become your best self. There are over 400 episodes for you to explore, with new episodes every week. So check it out. Listen to Rebel Girls wherever you get your podcasts. And find us on youtube.com/rebelgirls. And whatever you do, stay rebel.
For 8 years, we've been asking the same question over and over again. How did this happen? My name's Mandy.
And I'm Melissa, and we're the hosts of Moms and Mysteries, the true crime podcast with over 55 million downloads.
We're 2 Florida moms who are obsessed with mysteries. Each week, we do deep dives into fascinating true crime stories.
We cover everything from infamous cases like Casey Anthony
to the bizarre and complex crimes right here in our home state, like the shocking murder of FSU professor Dan Markell.
We bring you the facts, but with warmth and wit you'd only get from 2 friends who have been hooked on mysteries since childhood.
Join us for new episodes of Moms and Mysteries every Tuesday and Thursday.
Listen to Moms and Mysteries on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast.